For the past 11 hours and counting, the corps commander in Ladakh and his Chinese counterpart, Major General Lin Liu, have been engaged in a conversation at Chushul at an altitude of over 14,000 feet in Ladakh. And the aim is to figure out how quickly will the Chinese retreat between finger 4 and finger 8 and get back to the other side of the line of actual control. So talks started at 11:30 this morning. The Indian delegation is led by the Fire and Fury Corps Commander, Lieutenant General Harinder Singh. The Chinese delegation is led by Major General Lin Liu, the South Xinjiang District Commander. And India's main focus is restoration of status quo ante as it existed before the 2nd of May 2020. The Chinese, according to sources, have been saying, let's meet halfway in one conversation and another conversation, saying they are not beyond the line of actual control. They're up to their claim lines. But the fact that talks have been on, and these are the 4th round of talks, have been on for the past 11 hours and still on, seems to indicate that tough negotiations are underway. India Today will get you the latest on that. I'm Gaurav Sawant. Welcome to this special broadcast from Vijay Chowk. As always, let's get started with the headlines on India. Our top focus story on the broadcast is the Corps Commander level talks that's happening at Chushul at an altitude of 14,000 feet plus. Remember, Chushul is very close to where the Battle of Rizangla was fought in 1962. There used to be an advanced landing ground of the Indian Air Force in this area, but some of that territory was in dispute. But the current conversation that's happening is about Pangong So, where India insists that the Chinese must retreat beyond finger 8 as far as Pangong So is concerned, and also from the Depsang Plains. Remember, there were 4 friction points. Reports seem to indicate, and that is what army sources tell India Today, that the Chinese have gone back 2 kilometers from Galwan, from Petrol Point 15 and 17A, which is Hot Springs and Gogra. But Depsang remains an area of concern. Depsang Plains north, very close to Karakoram. There's also a situation in Pangong So where the Chinese have thinned out at finger 4. They are at finger 5 but remain all the way between finger 5 and finger 8, which is Indian territory. Also, despite having thinned out, they remain on the ridge line. So what's the latest? Let's quickly cut across to India Today's editor defense, Abhishek Bhalla, who joins us with more on the story. We also have Lieutenant General Sanjay Kulkarni, General Sanjay Kulkarni is former Director General of Infantry. He's also served extensively in Ladakh, joins us on the broadcast. But Abhishek, what's the latest?
Gaurav, this is the 4th round of talks that is still underway. Last I heard was that the talks could go to about 11 p.m. And it's important because this is the first time the Corps Commander level meeting is happening after the initial phase of the disengagement that has taken place in the friction areas. That was a disengagement of about 2 kilometers. It also included the Pangong Lake, which means that the Chinese did retreat from finger 4 to finger 5. But now the big challenge is, because India wants that they should go beyond finger 8, as India feels that the line of actual control runs through finger 8. That's been the Indian position all throughout. And also it's important for India to press to the fact that they need to come back to finger 4, because as per the agreement, even the Indian troops retreated slightly, but holding on to finger 4 is obviously very important, because that's Indian territory, and an Indian army has always had control over it. Other than that, Depsang Plains, of course, is another concern. Other than this, Gaurav, a complete pullback in other areas, including the heavy armor and the artillery that was brought back. So the focus, what I've been told, is also on de-induction. Whether it will be possible as of now or not, we'll have to wait and watch. But this round of talks is extremely critical for what happens in the future.
And the fact that it's been on for 11 hours and counting seems to indicate that both sides remain engaged and perhaps have a couple of bargaining chips up their sleeve. General Kulkarni, you understand the Chinese mind well. What do you make of talks that are on for 11 hours and counting? And another reason here, sir, to be concerned that it's not just disengagement, it is de-induction. Those two Chinese divisions, they need to go back to their peacetime location. Otherwise, the Chinese could try something surreptitiously, if not now, perhaps in October, like they did in 1962, General Kulkarni.
Gaurav, I think the onus of responsibility is that of the Chinese. Otherwise, the Chinese are quite known for what they call it is the da-da, tan-tan. Means keep fighting and keep talking and keep smiling. And you've got to be very, very careful when you're talking to the Chinese, because you can only discuss with Chinese from a position of strength. And that position of strength we seem to have got after the incident at Galwan. And that is where we really need to capitalize. And the acid test of the entire disengagement is finger 4 to finger 8. The status quo as in April 2020 is what everybody would want. And that is what the Chinese must also do. Notwithstanding all that we have, the Chinese will always would want to bargain, and what people always refer to as salami slicing. Come bit and then go back half a bit and then keep arguing and keep, haggling over it. Nothing but status quo ante. That is April 2020.
Oh, absolutely. And remember, Prime Minister Narendra Modi, when he was in Nimu, he made one thing very clear. Peace comes from a position of strength. India has a couple of very important bargaining chips up our sleeve. Not everything is in public domain just as yet, but the moment sources confirm that, the government confirms that, we'll be telling you more about it. But I want to shift focus to the other big story and more breaking news coming in. And this time it's coming in from the United Kingdom, where the UK has decided to ban the Huawei network from 5G. Of course, it comes with a caveat. What has UK said? They've taken a policy decision. No Huawei in mobile service providers, no Huawei technology to be used, but technology they can still buy till December 2020 and can still use in their system till 2027. And this is where the UK appears to be trying to not anger China and yet being with the United States of America. Remember, the US has been very clear, 5G technology, especially Huawei, is Chinese spy material, and Chinese are using this to spy on the US. Remember, India was the first to actually ban Huawei and ZTE from 4G upgradation. India also has indicated, again, sources just as yet, that Huawei will have no role to play in 5G upgradation. The question also remains then, what's the alternate technology? What's the alternative as far as India is concerned? The US has said no Huawei. Very big no from the United States of America to Huawei and ZTE. UK says no Huawei, but after December 2020. This means that companies can still buy from Huawei till December 2020, and they can continue to use this till 2027. Incidentally, several technology giants have been saying that by 2027, they'll be talking about 6G technology. So is the United Kingdom serious? Lavina Tandon now joins us from London for more on the story. Lavina, if you can hear me, just wanted to figure out, is the US serious about banning Huawei from 5G, or are they running with the hare and hunting with hounds?
Gaurav, could you please repeat yourself, please?
Give us more details about UK taking a conscious decision on Huawei and 5G, Lavina.
Right. Gaurav, there is a background to it. Of course, now the US, having put the sanctions, has led for the UK to take the final decision. But Huawei was a controversial deal from the start. And the fact that there is at the back of the mind of people that COVID and then the whole Hong Kong crisis has also led a lot of breaking of the relationship between UK and China, which was supposed to be in its golden period when George Osborne, the last minister, was here, the chancellor was here. Then it was a golden period, but now this is a real shift and a break between the relationship between UK and China, and of course it has come at the behest of US. US and UK share a very special relationship. It's not that that's for all that is to this story. There is much more. decision of the national security law that China brought about against Hong Kong, which was actually given from UK to China in 1997 for £1 under two-state policy. And the entire deal was that they are not going to change any policy for the next coming 50 years, which is what China has not done, and that has not gone down very well with UK. And
no, but then why give Huawei time till December 2020? UK companies can continue to get Huawei technology till December 2020, if I understand this correctly, and can continue to use it till 2027. Why not an outright ban?
Yes, the reason for that is, Gaurav, that it is very difficult. It is a very complicated technological in the entire thing. The parts come from US, some of them are made in China, some of them. So it's a very complicated thing to work out, and it's going to cause a lot of inconvenience to the people. And that, I must also add that 2G, 3G, 4G, nothing happens to that. It's just going forward for the new technology. So the old technology stays. And number two, the reason is that after US having put sanctions, Huawei could not manufacture itself, so it had to involve a third party, and that is where the national cyber security in UK came into play and said that we cannot allow a third party, and that is a security concern for the country. So on the face of it, one would say that yes, there is a very nice picture of the background of Hong Kong, but of course there is pressure from the US as well. So it's political as well as technological issue that is coming.
Well, let's see how does UK handle this, because these so-called wolf warriors, the Chinese diplomats, they've threatened UK with retaliatory action. Let's see what happens in the days and weeks to come. For the moment, Lavina Tandon, many thanks for joining me. I now want to shift focus to the other big story we're tracking here on India Today. A United States intelligence assessment is that the Chinese Communist Party and the army are putting pressure on the families of the Chinese martyrs of Galwan not to have public funerals and burials. Why? Because they fear a backlash.
With full military honours, Colonel Santosh Babu, commanding officer of the 16 Bihar Regiment, and the other 19 heroes of the Galwan Valley were cremated as the world watched. In China, there's deathly silence over Chinese military casualties. What's even worse, the Chinese Communist Party is reported to be putting pressure on families of the killed soldiers not to conduct either burials or public memorials. A US intelligence assessment says China is ill-treating the grieving Chinese families. The Chinese Ministry of Civil Affairs had told families of their killed soldiers in Galwan that they must forego traditional burial ceremonies and cremated the soldiers in a military cantonment. China used the coronavirus pandemic as an excuse to deny permissions for ritual burials. The government is struggling to silence families and friends of the Chinese soldiers killed, many of whom appear to be expressing their anguish on social media.
It appears to have gone viral after the US report that the Chinese are trying to cover up their dead after the brutal hand-to-hand combat that took place on the night of 15th June at Galwan. The Chinese are aware of the implications, and therefore the controlled media is underplaying this incident of Galwan.
There are conflicting reports about the number of Chinese soldiers killed or injured in the Galwan clashes on the night of June the 15th. While some reported 43 Chinese fatalities and injuries, the US intelligence assessment based on leaks from China indicated 35 Chinese soldiers had ultimately died. In India, Prime Minister Narendra Modi led the nation in paying tribute to the Indian braves, assuring the nation their sacrifices will not go in vain.
मैं देश को भरोसा दिलाना चाहता हूं, हमारे जवानों का बलिदान व्यर्थ नहीं जाएगा। हमारे लिए भारत की अखंडता और संप्रभुता सर्वोच्च है।
Prime Minister Modi also praised the families and mothers of the brave soldiers, saying they were worth worshipping. China, on the other hand, did acknowledge its casualties, but has refused to give out numbers and has definitely not respected the families.
In India, the Galwan Braves were cremated with full military honors. In China, the Communist Party is trying to brush the deaths of Chinese soldiers at Galwan under the carpet. The American assessment is that China may try to use the coronavirus pandemic as an excuse to hide facts from their people, but questions are already being asked. And it remains to be seen how long can President Xi Jinping's dispensation continue to hide truth from their own people. With cameraman Kripal Singh in Delhi, Gaurav Sawant for India Today. I want to once again bring in Lieutenant General Sanjay Kulkarni for more on this. General Kulkarni, we're seeing Chinese belligerence at the line of actual control. Of course, Galwan was a befitting response. We're seeing their belligerence in South China Sea, in East China Sea, with America in trade war, with United Kingdom. And now they're facing floods within. Now, what's China aiming at? Can it continue to completely ignore its own people, families of soldiers, veterans and martyrs and their kin, and ride roughshod over them?
Gaurav, not at all. I think that is the catch-22 that Chinese are in now in. They really don't know. China just might implode. It is facing tremendous amount of crisis within, economic crisis and emotional crisis, the kind they see. The social media is so very, effective. So much so that the Chinese have started questioning their own leadership. And the fact that the leadership can be questioned in China is indicative of the kind of apprehensions that are going on. I think China right now is in the back foot, but China probably has gone wrong somewhere. They didn't seem to realize it, that the whole world after the pandemic would be against them. And the Chinese are actually on the back foot with the Americans, with the United Kingdom. You find it in Hong Kong, you find that in Taiwan, you see that in Australia, you see what they're doing in India. So they seem to have really gone off the rock, and they don't seem to be really understanding what is really bothering them. And now Xi Jinping, this is the time, probably he's trying to make moves now to make sure that the things internally also, economically, they're on the back foot, emotionally, totally on the back foot, and the way they're going about the crisis, they're not even playing Galwan.
So, absolutely. So we do hear some conciliatory noises being made from China, especially when it comes to India, but very aggressive when it comes to the United States of America and the United Kingdom. So is China blowing hot, blowing cold? Because overall the assessment in the world is the Chinese cannot be trusted. That's a fact. They say something, they mean something else, and the actions on ground are completely different. And the United States of America has read the right act to China on South China Sea.
The tensions between Washington and Beijing have further escalated. In a stunning move, the United States has rejected China's territorial claims in the South China Sea. The U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo has termed China's pursuit of offshore resources in parts of the South China Sea as completely unlawful, drawing an angry response from Beijing.
We express strong dissatisfaction and opposition to erroneous action of US. We urge US to stop stirring up trouble on South China Sea issues and not to go further down the wrong path. China will continue to protect the sovereignty and safety and will firmly safeguard friendly cooperative relationship with regional countries and the peace and stability in South China Sea.
China claims an area known as the 9-Dash Line and has backed its claim with island building and patrols. It has expanded its military presence there, even as it insists its intentions are peaceful.
The US statements neglects the history and facts of the issues concerned with South China Sea. It breaches the promise the US government made to not take sides on South China Sea issues. It violates and distorts the international law, deliberately provokes maritime and territorial disputes, damages regional peace and stability, which is irresponsible.
Countries around the sea, including the Philippines, Vietnam, Brunei and Malaysia, also claim parts of the area. So does Taiwan.
The great powers, as they escalate their rivalry, will woo us into their side. We will be sure that we will advance our national interest, and meanwhile, we want all parties involved to abide with the rule of law, particularly with the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea.
World powers are not mincing words and are calling out China for its aggressive tactics. Japan lashed out at China for unilaterally enforcing its power on the border with India.
China
has been unilaterally enforcing its power on the border between China and India, the Bhutan border, in the South China Sea, the East China Sea and multiple places.
China is slowly but surely being isolated in its own backyard. The formal rejection of China's maritime claims in the South China Sea by the US comes at a time when two US nuclear-powered aircraft carriers, Nimitz and Ronald Reagan, are in the region openly challenging the unproven might of the PLA Navy. Bureau Report, India Today.
So you have two US supercarriers, Ronald Reagan and Nimitz, in South China Sea. We are told other navies will also join them in a while from now. Our Foreign Affairs editor Geeta Mohan joins me for more on the story. Geeta, is this the world now uniting against Chinese belligerence, even as China carves out new friendships with countries like Iran?
Well, that's right, and particularly in the maritime sector, Gaurav, what we're looking at is the United States of America officially coming out with and aligning itself with the arbitral tribunal's decision on where China's territory really ends and where it begins, saying that they have no lawful claim over the islands and the territories around the islands, the maritime territory around the islands, that China claims to be their own. Apart from that, it's not just the United States of America. Today, Japan came out with a white paper approved by Shinzo Abe, Prime Minister of Japan, which says absolutely the same thing. The defense white paper says exactly what US has been saying that the status quo is being changed by China in the East China Sea and the South China Sea. So two major important countries coming out against China, taking a stand on the South China Sea and East China Sea and the territorial claims, the false claims that are being made by China.
Oh, absolutely. This so-called 9-dash line of China is unacceptable, at least to the free world. But given this scenario, I want to quickly bring in General Kulkarni for a last word on this. What can the world do? Because China has given the world a fait accompli. It's created islands, it's made runways, it's got ships and aircraft deployed there.
Gaurav, the Chinese belligerence is the result because the world kept quiet when what Chinese were doing in the South China Sea. South China Sea is almost 90% of it is being claimed by China. And now you get Paracel Islands and the Spratly Islands, both. Imagine Philippines have threatened China now. ASEAN has given a call to China to lay off. So you find that Chinese are on the back foot. Now with maritime domination of the Chinese suspect, militarily on the back foot. I think air dominance with us, with the strategic weapons the world over at their respective places. I think China will soon realize that what they intended to do, what they thought that after the Cold War, they were the best in the world, they aren't the best, and they are on the back foot, and it's time they withdrew.
Well, or under a dictator like Xi Jinping, they could even get more belligerent. We'll have to watch that very, very closely. General Kulkarni, as always, many thanks for joining me. Abhishek Bhalla, Geeta Mohan, and our entire team at India Today will track the story very closely. A quick break. Lots more coming up. Major political developments that are taking place. All that and much more on the other side of a quick break. Stay with us.